In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless species have risen and fallen, where empires span star systems and wars rage across light years, there exists a universal truth that even the most advanced civilizations struggle to comprehend. The most dangerous weapon in existence isn't a plasma cannon, a quantum destroyer, or a planet-cracking dreadnought. It's a human who has been pushed too far. The Galactic Council had dismissed humanity as another primitive species when first contact was made. Their military assessments were laughable, their technology centuries behind, their political systems chaotic and inefficient. What the Council failed to understand was that humans had spent millennia perfecting the one thing that truly mattered in the cosmos, the art of righteous fury. They were about to learn this lesson through the story of Dr. Sarah Chen, a xenobiologist whose quiet dedication to peace would transform her into the most feared military strategist the galaxy had ever known. Her journey from silent scientist to legendary warrior would reshape the very foundations of galactic civilization. This is the story of how one woman's unheard voice became a battle cry that echoed across the stars. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palms against the cold metal table as the holographic display flickered before her, showing the devastating images from the Kepler
442 research station, 17 human scientists dead.
3 months of groundbreaking xenobiological research destroyed. And according to the Galactic Council's official report, it was all just an unfortunate accident. The biosignatures didn't lie. The energy residue patterns were unmistakable. The Zephyrian attack ships had deliberately targeted the civilian research facility, executing every human aboard with methodical precision. Yet the Council's investigation had concluded that mechanical failure was to blame. Dr. Top Chen, the Council representatives are ready for your testimony, announced her assistant Marcus, his voice carefully neutral. She could see the sympathy in his eyes, but also the resignation. They both knew how this would end. The Council chamber aboard Nexus Station was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the diverse physiologies of the galaxy's major species. The ethereal telluri floated in their crystalline chambers, their translucent forms pulsing with bioluminescent thought patterns. The massive Corvan delegates sat hunched in their reinforced seats, their rocky exteriors making them look like living mountains. The reptilian Zephyrians, with their elegant scaled features and predatory grace, occupied the positions of highest honor as the Council's current military advisors. Sarah walked to the central testimony platform, her human form dwarfed by the alien architecture around her. She carried a data tablet containing irrefutable evidence of the Zephyrian attack on Kepler 442, but she had already seen how the Council operated. Human testimony carried little weight in these chambers. Dr. Chen spoke Council Prime Zeltar, a Taluri whose form shimmered with authority. You have requested this emergency session to dispute our findings regarding the Kepler 442 incident. Please present your evidence. Sarah activated her tablet, and the holographic display filled with detailed sensor data. Council Prime, the energy signatures clearly show Zephyrian plasma weaponry. The attack patterns are consistent with their military doctrine. The timing coincides with their territorial expansion into Sector 7. This was not an accident. A low rumble came from the Corvan section, which she had learned was their equivalent of dismissive laughter. Zephyrian Commander Vexai rose with fluid grace, his silver scales catching the chamber's lights. Council Prime, with respect to Dr. Biperian, Chen's enthusiasm. Humans are known for their tendency toward paranoid conspiracy theories. The evidence clearly shows catastrophic system failure. Perhaps if human technology were more reliable, Commander Vextavai Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp with frustration. 17 scientists died because you wanted to eliminate competition for the rare earth mining rights in that system. The Kepler 442 station was documenting how your mining operations were destroying indigenous ecosystems. Chen. Council Prime Zeltar's voice resonated through the chamber with sudden authority. You will address this council with proper respect. Commander Vex High is a valued military advisor, and the Zephyrian Empire has been instrumental in maintaining galactic stability. Your accusations are not only unfounded but dangerous to interspecies relations. Sarah felt her face flush with anger, but she forced herself to remain calm. I have sensor logs, communications records, and forensic evidence. All I'm asking is for a proper investigation. The investigation has been completed, declared Counselor Tundar, a massive Korvan whose voice boomed like grinding stone. The matter is closed. Humans must accept that their primitive technology sometimes fails catastrophically. Primitive? Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay composed. Our quantum sensors detected your ship's signatures before they fired. Our communication arrays recorded your encrypted tactical chatter. Our forensic algorithms— Enough! Commander Vex's High's voice cut through hers like a blade. This human's hysterical accusations are exactly why her species cannot be trusted with important decisions. They lack the emotional stability for rational discourse. The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Sarah looked around at the assembled aliens, seeing in their alien features the same dismissive expressions she had encountered for the past 5 years since humanity joined the galactic community. The Tollery's bioluminescent patterns showed patterns of boredom and irritation. The Korvans had literally turned their massive forms away from her. The Zephyrians watched with predatory amusement. My colleagues at Kepler, 442, dedicated their lives to advancing xenobiology for the benefit of all species, Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying in the sudden stillness. Dr. Martinez was working on symbiotic organisms that could revolutionize agricultural yields across multiple worlds. Dr. Okafor had discovered fungal networks that might allow faster-than-light communication. Dr. Yamamoto was developing medical applications that could extend lifespans for species throughout the galaxy. She looked directly at Commander Vexehai. They died because they discovered that your mining operations were poisoning 3 different biospheres, and you couldn't allow that information to reach the Council. Chen. Council Prime Zeltar's form flared with warning colors. You are dangerously close to making accusations that could be considered acts of aggression against a Council member species. I strongly advise you to reconsider your position. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, but a crystalline clarity she had never experienced before. She looked around the chamber one more time, seeing the faces of beings who had decided that human lives simply didn't matter enough to investigate their deaths properly. I see, she said softly. So this is how it works. Humans die, and as long as the right species benefits, it's just an unfortunate accident. Shen, Council Prime Zeltar began, but she was already backing away from the testimony platform. No, I understand perfectly now, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. Human voices don't carry weight here. Our evidence doesn't matter. Our lives are expendable. She reached the chamber's exit and turned back one final time. But you know what? That's fine, because you've just taught me something very important about how this galaxy really works. Commander Vexhai leaned forward, his predatory features showing amusement. And what lesson would that be, little human? Sarah's smile was razor sharp. That sometimes when your voice goes unheard, you need to find a different way to make yourself understood. She walked out of the council chamber with her head held high, but her mind was already racing. The aliens thought they knew humanity. They had studied human military history and concluded that humans were weak, chaotic, and technologically inferior. They had examined human psychology and decided that humans were emotional and irrational. What they hadn't understood was that these perceived weaknesses could become devastating strengths in the right circumstances. And they certainly hadn't grasped the fundamental truth about humans. When pushed to their breaking point, they didn't break. They adapted. They evolved. They became something entirely new. As Sarah walked through the corridors of Nexus Station, passing groups of various alien species going about their business, she felt something fundamental shifting inside her worldview. For 5 years, she had believed in the promise of galactic cooperation, in the dream of peaceful coexistence between species. She had dedicated her career to advancing scientific knowledge that would benefit everyone. But that naive idealism was dying. replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. If the galaxy wanted to treat humans as expendable, then perhaps it was time to remind everyone exactly why Earth's history was written in blood and fire. Sarah reached her quarters and immediately began encrypting a message to Earth. But it wasn't going to the Civilian Science Corps or the Diplomatic Service. Instead, she composed a detailed report for someone she had hoped never to contact again, Admiral Catherine Morrison, her sister, who commanded humanity's Black Ops military division. The message was simple. Kate, they killed 17 scientists and called it an accident. The Council won't listen to evidence. It's time to show them what humans do when diplomacy fails. I'm sending you everything. Make them pay. As she transmitted the encrypted message, Sarah looked out the viewport at the stars beyond Nexus Station. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was expanding its territory, confident that the galactic community would continue to ignore their crimes as long as they maintained the right political relationships. They were about to learn that they had made a critical error in judgment. They had silenced Dr. Sarah Chen, peaceful xenobiologist and advocate for interspecies cooperation. But in doing so, they had awakened something far more dangerous. Sarah Chen, brilliant strategist and humanity's newest weapon in a war that was about to begin, the aliens had dismissed her voice when she spoke for peace. Soon they would hear it again when she spoke for war, and this time they would listen. 3 weeks after her failed testimony, Sarah found herself aboard the stealth ship Retribution as it drifted silently through the asteroid belt of the Kepler PO 442 system. The research station's debris still floated among the rocks, a grim monument to the 17 lives lost and the Council's willful blindness. Admiral Catherine Morrison stood beside her sister at the observation deck, her military bearing a stark contrast to Sarah's civilian clothes. Where Sarah was slight and academic, Kate was tall and commanding, her presence filling any room she entered. The Morrison sisters had chosen different paths after their parents died in the first contact incident, but now those paths had converged in the most unexpected way. "The scans confirm everything in your report," Kate said, her voice professional but cold with controlled anger. "Zephyrian plasma signatures, tactical approach patterns, even residual quantum traces from their cloaking technology. They didn't even try to hide it properly." Sarah nodded, watching the debris field slowly rotate in the pale light of Kepler 442's distant star. They didn't think anyone would investigate thoroughly enough to find the evidence. The Council accepted their version of events without question. That was their first mistake, Kate replied. Their second mistake was thinking that the Council speaks for all of humanity. Through the observation windows, they could see other human ships moving with predatory grace through the asteroid belt. The Vindication, a heavy cruiser bristling with experimental weapons. The Nemesis, a sleek destroyer designed for hit-and-run operations. The Fury, a carrier whose fighter bays contained the most advanced combat craft in human space. Each ship bore the Black Star insignia of the Human Defense Initiative, the military organization that operated independently of both the civilian government and the Council-approved diplomatic fleet. "How many ships do we have?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. 47 in this battle group alone, Kate answered, with another 120 throughout human space. We've been preparing for this day since the Council made it clear that human lives are considered expendable. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. "Kate, what exactly are you planning?" Her sister turned to face her directly, and Sarah saw in Kate's eyes the same cold fury that had been growing in her own heart since the Council hearing.
"We're going to teach the galaxy a lesson about consequences."
"The Zephyrians want to play games with human lives? Fine. But they're going to learn that humans play those games better than anyone else." Admiral Morrison activated a holographic display that showed the Zephyrian Empire's territorial holdings. Red markers indicated military installations, while blue markers showed civilian populations. Yellow markers highlighted economic infrastructure. The Zephyrians have built their empire on the assumption that superior technology and council protection make them untouchable, Kate explained. They've conquered 17 worlds in the past century, and the Council has consistently ruled that their expansions were defensive actions or legitimate territorial adjustments. What happens if they can do with assistance of casuals? Their expansion follows a clear strategy. They target systems with valuable resources but limited defensive capabilities. Then they eliminate any potential opposition before moving in to claim the territory. And they've been particularly effective at eliminating human research stations and mining colonies that might interfere with their operations. Kepler 442 was just the latest. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. How many other stations have they destroyed? Kate's expression darkened. 17 research facilities over the past 3 years, 6 mining operations, 3 exploration outposts, all ruled as accidents or mechanical failures by the Council. 234 people, Sarah whispered, the numbers appearing in her mind with painful clarity. They've killed 234 humans, and the Council has covered it up every time. The civilian government wants to believe that diplomacy and cooperation will eventually work. They keep thinking that if we just prove ourselves worthy, the other species will treat us as equals. Sarah felt her last vestiges of idealism crumbling like ancient paper. But you know better. I know that respect isn't given, it's taken, and I know that the only thing these species understand is strength. Kate gestured to the tactical display. The Zephyrians have made a career out of calculated aggression backed by Council protection. They attack when they're certain there will be no meaningful retaliation. So what do? Kate's smile was predatory. We show them what meaningful retaliation looks like. The Admiral activated another display, this one showing detailed schematics of Zephyrian military installations. Intelligence suggests that Commander Vex High is personally overseeing mining operations in the Tau Ceti system. He's there with a squadron of their newest dreadnoughts and approximately 15,000 military personnel. Sarah's breath caught. You're planning to attack their military directly? Oh, no, Kate said, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. That would be exactly what they expect from humans. Crude, direct, emotional. They've probably already prepared defensive strategies based on their analysis of human military doctrine. She manipulated the display to show a different system entirely. This is the Rigel Manufacturing Complex. It's where the Zephyrians produce their most advanced plasma weapons, completely automated, defended by AI systems with only a minimal caretaker crew of about 50 technicians. Sarah began to understand. You're not going after their military, you're going after their industrial capacity. The Zephyrians have spent decades building an empire based on technological superiority. Their weapons, their ships, their infrastructure, it all depends on specialized manufacturing that they've centralized for efficiency. Kate highlighted several more installations. 12 key facilities produce 90% of their military hardware. Without them, their entire war machine grinds to a halt within 6 months. But Kate, that's still an act of war. The Council will do exactly what they always do, Kate interrupted. They'll investigate, find the evidence inconclusive, and rule it an unfortunate series of accidents, just like they did with our people. Sarah stared at the tactical displays, her mind racing through the implications. It was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. A surgical strike against economic targets that would cripple the Zephyrian military without directly engaging their fleet. And if executed properly, it could be designed to look like a series of industrial accidents rather than coordinated attacks. How long have you been planning this? She asked. 5 years, Kate admitted. Ever since the Council made it clear that human lives don't matter in their calculations, we've been mapping their infrastructure, studying their technologies, preparing for the day when diplomacy finally failed completely. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the scout ships. Commander James Park, Kate's intelligence chief, approached with a tablet full of data. Zephyrian activity in the target systems is proceeding according to predicted patterns. All manufacturing facilities are operating at normal capacity with minimal security presence. Kate nodded. Good, Sarah, I want you to see something. She led her sister to a different section of the ship. through corridors lined with weapons lockers and tactical displays. They passed groups of soldiers in black combat armor, their faces grim with purpose. They entered a briefing room where a dozen of humanity's best military minds were gathered around a holographic table. Sarah recognized some of them from news reports, legendary figures from humanity's various conflicts, tacticians who had written the book on asymmetric warfare. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kate announced, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Chen, the xenobiologist whose research led us to this moment." Colonel Elena Vasquez, a veteran of the Mars Independence War, looked up from her tactical analysis. "Doctor, your intelligence on Zephyrian biology has been invaluable. Their reliance on symbiotic neural networks makes them particularly vulnerable to the disruption tactics we've developed." Sarah blinked in confusion. "My research? But that was just academic xenobiology." "I never intended your study of Zephyrian neural integration was brilliant," interrupted Major David Kim, a specialist in electronic warfare. "Their entire command structure depends on biocybernetic links between individuals. Disrupt those links, and their military coordination collapses. But that research was about understanding their culture, not finding ways to attack them." Kate placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "Sarah, do you know why I asked you to be here? I assumed it was because I uncovered the evidence of their attacks. That's part of it. But the main reason is that you understand these species better than any human alive. You've studied their biology, their psychology, their social structures. You know how they think, how they operate, how they make decisions." The weight of realization settled on Sarah like a lead blanket. "You want me to help you plan the attacks. I want you to help us win," Kate said simply. "The Zephyrians think they know humans. They've studied our military history and concluded that we're predictable. They expect us to attack their military targets directly, to fight the kind of conventional war they're prepared for." Colonel Vasquez activated a new display showing human military engagements throughout history. "Every human conflict has taught us something about adapting to impossible odds. Vietnam taught us about asymmetric warfare. The Troubles taught us about psychological operations. The cyber wars taught us about infrastructure attacks. The Mars Rebellion taught us about fighting technologically superior opponents. But what makes this different," Major Kim continued, "is that we've never fought an enemy we understood this completely. Thanks to your research, we know exactly how their command structures work, how their technology integrates with their biology, and most importantly, how their society will react when their technological advantages disappear." Sarah looked around the room at the assembled military leadership, seeing in their faces the same cold determination that had been growing in her own heart. These weren't warmongers or glory seekers. They were professionals who had spent years preparing for a conflict they hoped would never come. "The Council thinks human emotional responses make us unpredictable and dangerous," Kate said. "They're right about the dangerous part, but they're wrong about unpredictable. Human emotions properly channeled are incredibly precise instruments." She gestured to the tactical displays surrounding them. "Anger can become calculation. Grief can become patience. Fury can become surgical precision. The Zephyrians killed our people because they thought humans were too weak and disorganized to respond effectively." Sarah felt the last of her resistance crumble as she looked at the evidence of systematic murder and the machinery being assembled to respond to it. "What do you need me to do?" Kate's smile was sharp as a blade. "Help us show them what happens when you back humans into a corner. Help us demonstrate why Earth's history is written in the ashes of everyone who underestimated us." As Sarah looked around the room at humanity's War Council, she realized that her sister was right about one thing. The aliens had studied human military history, but they had fundamentally misunderstood its most important lesson. Humans didn't win wars through superior technology or overwhelming force. They won by adapting faster than their enemies, by turning apparent weaknesses into devastating strengths, and by never, ever giving up. The Zephyrians had silenced doctor worship. Sarah Chen, the peaceful scientist, but in doing so they had awakened something far more dangerous. Sarah Chen, strategic advisor to humanity's most elite military minds. And now the galaxy was about to learn why that had been a fatal mistake. The Rigel manufacturing complex hung in space like a mechanical moon, its countless production modules and assembly arrays glinting in the harsh light of the binary star system. Sarah watched through the Retribution stealth sensors as automated systems worked with inhuman precision, churning out the plasma weapons that had killed her colleagues. "Target analysis complete," reported Commander Parkin. "Minimal biological presence confirmed. 47 Zephyrian technicians and 3 supervisory staff, all automated systems are operating through the central AI network." Sarah studied the complex's schematics on her tablet, cross-referencing them with her knowledge of Zephyrian technology. The AI core is bio-integrated with the supervisory staff. It's designed to be hack-proof by requiring biological authentication for any major system changes, but not immune to biological disruption, added Colonel Vasquez, who had been studying Sarah's research for weeks. "If we can interfere with the neural links between the supervisors and the AI, the entire facility locks down automatically. That's why we need precision rather than brute force." Sarah explained to the team how the Zephyrian bio-cybernetic integration actually works. Sarah activated a holographic display showing the complex neural networks that connected Zephyrian supervisors to their AI systems. They don't just use computers, they merge with them temporarily. Their nervous systems interface directly with the facility's control matrix. It gives them unprecedented control and efficiency, but it also creates a single point of failure. Major Kim leaned forward, studying the bio-neural pathways. "So if we can disrupt the interface, the AI interprets it as a hostile takeover attempt and immediately shuts down all systems to prevent damage. It's a failsafe designed to protect their technology from cybernetic attacks." "How long would it take for them to restore operations?" asked Kate. Sarah ran calculations in her head, factoring in Zephyrian repair protocols and the complexity of their bio-cybernetic systems. Minimum 6 weeks to replace the damaged neural interfaces and recalibrate the AI. More likely 3 months, assuming they can get replacement technicians with compatible neural patterns. Colonel Vasquez smiled grimly. 3 months without their primary weapons manufacturing facility. That alone would force them to delay their expansion plans in Sector 7. "But this is just the beginning," Kate said, activating a larger tactical display. "Show them the full scope, Sarah." Sarah's fingers moved across the control interface, highlighting manufacturing complexes throughout Zephyrian space. 12 primary facilities produce 90% of their military hardware. Each one uses the same bio-cybernetic integration model because it's the most efficient design for their physiology. And each one has the same vulnerability, Major Kim realized. If we can develop a reliable method for disrupting their neural interfaces, we can shut down their entire military-industrial complex without firing a single shot at their military forces, Kate confirmed. No direct casualties, no traditional acts of war, just a series of unfortunate technical malfunctions that happen to cripple their expansion capabilities. Sarah felt a mixture of admiration and unease at the elegance of the plan. It was surgical, precise, and devastating. Everything the aliens thought humans incapable of achieving. But once we attack the first facility, they'll know what we're doing. They'll increase security on the others. That's why we're hitting all 12 simultaneously, Kate replied. Coordinated strikes across 11 star systems executed within a 6-hour window. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late to prevent it. Commander Park activated a communication display showing the deployment of human forces throughout the target systems. Stealth ships are already in position. Each team has been studying their target for weeks, mapping patrol routes, identifying optimal attack vectors, and preparing the specialized equipment needed to disrupt biocybernetic systems. 47 ships, 300 elite soldiers, and months of preparation, all coordinated to execute a strategy that would cripple an empire without technically starting a war. There's something else you need to understand, Kate said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. This operation isn't just about stopping Zephyrian expansion. It's about sending a message to the entire galactic community. She manipulated the display to show the broader political landscape of the galaxy. The Council operates on the assumption that smaller species like humanity will always submit to the will of the major powers. They believe that we need their protection and guidance more than we need independence. But if we can successfully conduct coordinated operations against a major council species without their authorization or oversight, Sarah began to understand, then we demonstrate that humanity is capable of independent action on a galactic scale, Kate finished. We prove that we don't need the council's permission to defend ourselves. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a military operation, it was a declaration of independence from the galactic power structure that had marginalized humanity since first contact. "Admiral," Commander Park announced, "all teams report ready for operation commencement, awaiting your authorization." Kate looked around the briefing room at her assembled officers, then at her sister. "Sarah, this is your last chance to walk away. Once we begin, there's no going back. The galaxy will never view humanity the same way again." Sarah thought about her 17 dead colleagues, about the Council's dismissive response to their murder, about the systematic campaign of violence that had been covered up for years. She thought about the choice between accepting humanity's role as a junior species in galactic civilization or proving that humans could be something more dangerous and independent. "Do it," she said quietly. Kate nodded and opened a communication channel to all human forces. "All teams, this is Admiral Morrison. Operation Prometheus is authorized. Execute on my mark." Sarah watched as tactical displays throughout the briefing room came alive with real-time feeds from 11 star systems. Stealth ships moved like shadows through space, approaching their targets with mechanical precision. Team Alpha approaching Rigel Complex. Beginning electronic warfare deployment. Team Gamma in position at Vega Manufacturing. Awaiting biodisruption sequence, Team Delta reports successful infiltration of Sirius Industrial Platform. Technicians have been isolated. Sarah found herself holding her breath as dozens of voices reported in from across the galaxy. Each team was executing the same basic strategy: infiltrate the facility, isolate the Zephyrian supervisory staff, deploy specialized equipment to disrupt their neural interfaces, and withdraw before security could respond. AI shutdown confirmed. Facility is entering lockdown mode. Team Echo confirms mission success at Procyon Manufacturing. Estimated restoration time, 12 weeks minimum. One by one, the reports came in. Manufacturing complexes that had operated continuously for decades were falling silent across Zephyrian space. Automated systems that had churned out weapons of conquest were shutting down as their biological supervisors collapsed into neural shock. Team Juliet reports complications at Capella shipyards, increased security presence detected. Sarah tensed as she listened to the tactical chatter from the Capella operation. Unlike the manufacturing complexes, the shipyard was a military installation with a significant defense force. "Multiple patrol ships responding to our position," the team leader reported, requesting permission to engage. Kate's voice was ice-cold, negative. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Complete objective and withdraw. Understood, Admiral. Deploying neural disruptors now, Sarah watched the tactical display as the human infiltration team moved through the shipyard superstructure, avoiding Zephyrian security forces while placing specialized devices near the bio-cybernetic integration nodes. Disruptors in position, activating in 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate and devastating. On the display, Sarah could see the shipyard's control systems cascading into failure as the AI core interpreted the neural disruption as a hostile attack. Emergency protocols engaged, sealing blast doors and shutting down all manufacturing operations. Mission successful. AI core is in full lockdown. Estimated restoration time, 16 weeks. Beginning extraction. Kate allowed herself a small smile as the final teams reported in. All teams report mission success. 0 casualties, 0 direct military engagement, 12 major manufacturing facilities disabled. Estimated impact on Zephyrian military production, 85% reduction for a minimum of 3 months. The briefing room erupted in quiet celebration as the officers realized the full scope of what they had accomplished. In a single coordinated operation, they had effectively neutered the military expansion capabilities of one of the galaxy's major powers. But Sarah found herself focusing on something else entirely. "Kate, what happens when the Council investigates these incidents?" "They'll find exactly what they found when our people were murdered," Kate replied. "Technical malfunctions, system failures, unfortunate accidents. The biodisruption devices are designed to burn out completely after activation, leaving no trace of external interference. And the Zephyrians will know what really happened, but they won't be able to prove it. Just like we knew they murdered our people but couldn't prove it to the Council's satisfaction." Sarah felt a cold satisfaction settling in her chest. It was poetic justice of the highest order. The same willful blindness that had protected Zephyrian crimes would now protect humanity's response. "Admiral," Commander Park announced, "we're receiving priority communications from Earth. The civilian government is requesting an immediate status report on any military operations in Zephyrian space." Kate's expression didn't change. "Tell them that the Human Defense Initiative is conducting routine training exercises in uninhabited systems. No operations in foreign territory to report." As the Retribution began its journey back to human space, Sarah stood at the observation deck watching the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, Zephyrian military leaders were discovering that their empire's expansion had ground to a halt. Manufacturing complexes that had operated for decades were silent. Weapons production had ceased. The machine of conquest had been broken by a handful of humans who understood that sometimes the most devastating attacks were the ones that looked like accidents. "You did well today," Kate said, joining her at the viewport. "Your research made this possible." Sarah nodded, but her mind was already moving ahead. "They'll adapt eventually, develop countermeasures, increase security, find ways to protect their biocybernetic systems. But that will take time, resources, and a fundamental restructuring of their entire technological infrastructure. And while they're adapting to this threat, we'll be developing new ones," Sarah finished. "Because that's what humans do. We adapt faster than anyone expects." Kate smiled. "Now you're beginning to understand the real lesson we're teaching the galaxy. It's not about the specific attack or the particular vulnerability we exploited. It's about demonstrating that humans can identify weaknesses in any system and develop ways to exploit them." As the stars wheeled slowly past the viewport, Sarah realized that her transformation was complete. The naive scientist who had believed in peaceful coexistence was gone, replaced by someone who understood that respect had to be earned through strength. The aliens had wanted her voice to go unheard when she spoke for justice. Now they would hear it clearly when she spoke for war, and this was only the beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 days after the manufacturing complex failures, and Sarah watched the proceedings from Earth through encrypted channels that officially didn't exist. The council chamber was in chaos, something she had never seen in 5 years of diplomatic observation. Commander Vexhai stood at the center of the chamber, his usual predatory composure replaced by barely controlled rage. His silver scales, normally pristine and elegant, showed stress patterns that Sarah's research had taught her to recognize. The proud Zephyrian military leader was experiencing something his species rarely encountered: helplessness. "Council Prime," Vexhai declared, his voice carrying across the chamber with unprecedented urgency. "The Zephyrian Empire has suffered a coordinated attack of unprecedented sophistication. 12 of our primary manufacturing facilities have been disabled simultaneously across 11 star systems." Council Prime Zeltar's form pulsed with skeptical patterns. "Commander, our preliminary investigations suggest a series of technical failures, not coordinated attacks." "The evidence indicates cascading AI malfunctions in your biocybernetic integration systems." Vexhai's voice rose to a dangerous pitch. 12 separate facilities using completely isolated systems, all suffering identical malfunctions within a 6-hour period. The probability of such simultaneous failures is astronomically remote. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the proceedings from her new office in the Human Defense Initiative headquarters. The same statistical arguments she had made about the Kepler 442 murders were now being used by the Zephyrians, with the same predictable results. Counselor Tundar's massive form rumbled with what Sarah had learned was Corvin amusement. Commander Vex High, perhaps the Zephyrian Empire has become too dependent on automated systems. The Corvin military has always maintained that biological oversight is essential for reliable operations. This has nothing to do with system reliability, Vexai snapped. We have detected traces of exotic particle emissions at each facility consistent with advanced human stealth technology. The chamber fell silent. For the first time since Sarah had been watching council proceedings, someone had directly accused humanity of military action against another member species. Council Prime Zeltar's form flared with warning colors. Commander, those are extremely serious accusations. Do you have concrete evidence of human involvement? The particle signatures are unmistakable, Vex High continued. Human quantum drive residue, human stealth field harmonics, human bioscanner emissions, the evidence is overwhelming. But circumstantial, interrupted a new voice. Ambassador Helen Rodriguez, humanity's senior diplomatic representative, had entered the chamber with perfect timing. Sarah hadn't seen her sister's diplomatic counterpart in months, but the woman looked as composed and professional as ever. Ambassador Rodriguez, Council Prime Sheltar acknowledged. The Council recognizes the human representative. Helen walked to the center of the chamber with the same confidence Sarah remembered from their previous encounters, but there was something different about her bearing, a subtle hardness that suggested she had been expecting this moment. Council Prime, the accusations being made by Commander Vexhai are not only unfounded but represent a dangerous escalation in rhetoric that threatens galactic stability, Helen said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The human civilian government categorically denies any involvement in attacks against Zephyrian installations. Sarah noticed the careful phrasing. The civilian government was denying involvement, not humanity as a whole. Vex Kai turned toward Helen with predatory focus. Ambassador, human stealth ships were detected in all 11 target systems. Explain their presence. Human commercial and exploration vessels travel throughout the galaxy in accordance with interstellar navigation treaties, Helen replied calmly. The presence of human ships in these systems proves nothing more than our people's commitment to peaceful trade and scientific exploration. Vex High's laugh was sharp and bitter. Is that what you call industrial sabotage? I call it what the evidence suggests, Helen responded. A series of technical failures and aging Zephyrian infrastructure. Perhaps the Empire should invest more resources in maintenance and safety protocols rather than territorial expansion. The verbal thrust hit home. Sarah watched Vexati's stress patterns intensify as the human ambassador turned the conversation towards Zephyrian military aggression. Council Prime Zeltar intervened before the exchange could escalate further. Ambassador Rodriguez, while the human government denies involvement, surely you understand the concerning pattern of these incidents. The Council must investigate all possibilities. Of course, Helen agreed, and I'm certain that investigation will reveal the same conclusions as your investigation into the Kepler 442 incident. That complex systems sometimes fail catastrophically, and that tragic coincidences do occur in a galaxy as vast as ours. Sarah felt a surge of savage satisfaction as she watched the council members process Helen's statement. The human ambassador had just thrown the council's own willful blindness back in their faces, and they couldn't object without admitting their previous investigations had been inadequate. Furthermore, Helen continued, I must note that these alleged attacks targeted only military manufacturing facilities. If humans were indeed capable of such sophisticated operations, one might question why civilian populations and infrastructure remained completely unharmed. It was a masterful manipulation of the narrative. Helen was simultaneously denying human involvement while pointing out that the attacks had been conducted with surgical precision that demonstrated remarkable restraint. Counselor Tunder leaned forward, his massive form projecting interest. Ambassador, Are you suggesting that the precision of these incidents indicates their purpose was to minimize casualties? I'm suggesting that whoever was responsible, if anyone was responsible, showed a level of strategic sophistication and moral constraint that the galaxy should probably find encouraging rather than alarming. Vex-High's scales rippled with frustrated rage. Moral constraint? They have crippled our military production capabilities. Have they? Helen asked innocently. Or have they simply delayed your expansion into Sector 7 while your engineers address technical problems with aging infrastructure? The question hung in the air like a blade. Everyone in the chamber knew that Zephyrion expansion into Sector 7 would displace 3 minor species and destroy several unique biospheres. Helen had just made it clear that humanity viewed that expansion as the real problem. Council Prime Zeltar's form showed patterns of deep consideration. Ambassador Rodriguez, is the human government prepared to assist in the investigation of these incidents? Absolutely, Helen replied. Human scientists and engineers would be happy to share their expertise on biocybernetic integration failures. In fact, I believe Dr. Sarah Chen, our leading expert on Zephyrian technology, has already published several research papers that might be relevant to understanding these malfunctions. Sarah nearly laughed out loud. Helen was offering to have the architect of the attacks help investigate them, while simultaneously establishing Sarah as humanity's foremost expert on the exact vulnerabilities that had been exploited. That will not be necessary, Vex-High said quickly, clearly unwilling to allow human scientists access to Zephyrian technology failures. As you wish, Helen replied smoothly. But the offer remains open if the Empire decides it needs assistance with its technical problems. The session continued for another hour, but Sarah could see that the essential outcome had already been determined. The Council would conduct an investigation, find insufficient evidence of deliberate attack, and rule the incidents as technical failures. The Zephyrians would know the truth but be unable to prove it, just as humans had known the truth about their murdered scientists but been unable to prove it. After the session ended, Sarah found herself in Admiral Morrison's office, reviewing the diplomatic aftermath with the senior leadership of the Human Defense Initiative. Helen played that perfectly, Kate observed. She managed to deny involvement while simultaneously making it clear that humans were capable of such operations and that we view Zephyrian expansion as threatening. And by offering scientific assistance, she established our expertise in the exact field that was compromised. If they accept, we learn more about their systems. If they refuse, it reinforces the impression that they have something to hide. Sarah studied the post-session intelligence reports flowing in from throughout the galaxy. The economic impact is already visible. Zephyrian military contractors are scrambling to find alternative suppliers. 3 expansion fleets have been recalled for refit and resupply delays. Construction on new territorial fortifications has been suspended indefinitely. But that's not the most important development, Major Kim added, activating a display showing communication intercepts throughout the galaxy. Look at how other species are reacting. The display showed a pattern of diplomatic communications between various minor species, the same kinds of civilizations that typically found themselves targeted for Zephyrian expansion. Sarah could see excitement, hope, and most importantly, inspiration in the intercepted messages. They're realizing that the major powers aren't invincible, Sarah said, understanding the implications immediately. Exactly, Kate confirmed. For centuries, species like the Valians, the Takari, and the Hegemony have accepted that they were too small and weak to resist expansion by the Council powers. But if humans can successfully strike back against the Zephyrians, then maybe they can resist other forms of aggression as well, Sarah finished. The door to Admiral Morrison's office opened and Ambassador Rodriguez entered, having just returned from the council session via emergency transport. Helen, Kate greeted her. Outstanding performance today. But we need to prepare for the next phase. The council will investigate, but Vex-AI isn't going to let this stand. He'll push for direct retaliation against human interests. Sarah felt a chill of apprehension. What kind of retaliation? Unknown at this point, Helen replied. But Vex-AI is a military strategist, not a diplomat. He'll want to respond with force rather than continue playing political games. Kate activated a holographic display showing human installations throughout the galaxy. Our people are already being recalled from non-essential positions in council space. Critical research stations have been reinforced with additional security, and our intelligence networks are monitoring all Zephyrian military communications for signs of planned action. There's something else, Helen continued. During the session, I noticed increased coordination between the Zephyrians and several other council species. This incident has made them realize that their technological superiority isn't absolute. Sarah studied the diplomatic analysis flowing across her tablet. They're scared. They should be, Kate said grimly. Because this operation wasn't just about stopping Zephyrian expansion. It was about demonstrating that humans have evolved beyond their expectations. What do you mean? When the Council first encountered humanity, they categorized us based on our apparent military capabilities and technological development. They saw us as a potentially useful junior species, strong enough to be valuable allies but not strong enough to threaten the established order. Sarah began to understand. But Operation Prometheus demonstrated capabilities they didn't know we possessed. Stealth technology that can penetrate their security perimeters, intelligence networks that can map their infrastructure in detail, strategic coordination across multiple star systems. Most importantly, the ability to identify and exploit vulnerabilities they didn't even know existed. Helen nodded. The Council is beginning to realize that their assessment of human capabilities was fundamentally flawed. We're not just stronger than they thought, we're more dangerous. As Sarah listened to the strategic discussion, she realized that something fundamental had shifted in the galactic balance of power. Operation Prometheus hadn't just damaged Zephyrian military production, it had announced the emergence of humanity as an independent strategic force. The aliens had dismissed her voice when she spoke for peace. They had learned to listen when she spoke for war. But now they were about to discover something even more alarming, that humans had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone suspected. The galaxy was about to learn that the most dangerous thing about backing humans into a corner wasn't their immediate response. It was discovering how long they had been preparing for exactly that situation. 6 months after Operation Prometheus, Sarah stood before the largest gathering of alien dignitaries in galactic history. But this time, she wasn't a dismissed scientist begging for justice. She was the architect of humanity's military strategy, and every being in the Grand Assembly was hanging on her words. The emergency summit had been called after 3 more council species suffered mysterious infrastructure failures, followed by successful resistance movements among previously subjugated civilizations. The galaxy's power structure was crumbling, and everyone knew that humanity was at the center of it. Dr. Chen, Council Prime Zeltar began, his form pulsing with barely controlled anxiety. The Council has invited you to address this assembly as humanity's senior strategic advisor. We hope this dialogue can help restore stability to the galactic community. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives, seeing species she had once admired and respected. The elegant Talori, the mighty Corvans, the predatory Zephyrians. But now she saw them through different eyes. These weren't enlightened leaders of galactic civilization. They were the architects of an oppressive system that had finally encountered effective resistance. Council Prime, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I appreciate this opportunity to speak. For too long, humanity's voice has gone unheard in these halls. Commander Vexahai, who had somehow survived the political aftermath of the manufacturing crisis, leaned forward aggressively. Dr. Chen, let us dispense with diplomatic niceties. The galaxy knows that humans are behind the wave of infrastructure attacks and revolutionary movements. The question is what you intend to do about it. Sarah smiled, and several alien representatives visibly recoiled at the predatory expression. Commander, you seem to be laboring under a fundamental misunderstanding. Humans aren't behind these developments. We simply provided a demonstration of what was already possible. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political structure over the past century. For 300 years, the council system has operated on a simple principle. Major species expand their territory and influence. This system worked because the minor species believed they had no choice. The display shifted to show the recent wave of resistance movements. The Valian republics had successfully repelled a Corvan invasion fleet. The Takari Confederation had liberated 3 worlds from Zephyrian control. The Hegemony Alliance had declared independence from council oversight entirely. But Operation Prometheus changed the fundamental equation, Sarah continued. It demonstrated that even the most technologically advanced council species had vulnerabilities that could be exploited by smaller, more adaptable forces. Counselor Thundar's massive form rumbled with displeasure. Dr. Chen, are you claiming that humans have been actively supporting these revolutionary movements? I'm stating that humans have been sharing knowledge, Sarah replied. Scientific research, strategic analysis, technological insights, the same kind of academic cooperation that Dr. Martinez, Dr. Okafor, and Dr. Yamamoto were engaged in before the Zephyrians murdered them. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species, but Sarah continued speaking over the chaos. You see, that's the real irony of this situation. You killed our scientists because you were afraid of what they might discover. But their deaths taught us something far more valuable than any research data. She paused, letting the chamber fall silent again. Their murders taught us that the council system only functions when smaller species remain isolated and afraid. But when we began sharing our knowledge with other civilizations, everything changed. A new voice entered the conversation. Ambassador Kellen of the Valian Republic stood at his delegation's position, his four-armed form radiating confidence that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. Dr. Chen speaks the truth, Kellen declared. Human scientists shared their research on bio-cybernetic vulnerabilities with Valian engineers. Human strategists provided tactical analysis that helped us understand how to counter Corvan heavy assault doctrines. Human intelligence networks warned us of planned invasions before they could achieve strategic surprise. Ambassador Kellen illustrates the point perfectly. Humans didn't fight the Corvans for you, we simply provided the knowledge you needed to fight them yourselves. Council Prime Zeltar's form was flashing rapidly through colors Sarah had learned indicated extreme agitation. Dr. Chen, this kind of knowledge sharing has destabilized the entire galactic order. Hundreds of worlds are in open rebellion. Trade routes have been disrupted. The Council's ability to maintain peace is being undermined. Commander Vex High, how many civilian research stations have the Zephyrians destroyed in the past 5 years? Vex High's scales rippled with anger, but he remained silent. Counselor Thundar, how many minor species have the Corvans forcibly relocated to make room for mining operations? The massive Corvan turned away from her gaze. Council Prime Zeltar, how many times has the Council investigated crimes committed by major species against minor ones and found the evidence insufficient? The Taluri's form went completely dark for several seconds. You call it peace, Sarah continued, but it's actually just organized oppression. The only difference now is that the oppressed have learned to fight back effectively. She activated a new display showing casualty statistics from the recent conflicts. Do you know what's interesting about these liberation movements? Despite their success, total galactic casualties have actually decreased by 60% compared to the previous period of Council-sanctioned expansion. The implications hung in the air like a weapon. The destabilization that the Council feared was actually producing a more peaceful galaxy than their system of managed conquest. But that's not why you really called this summit, Sarah said, her voice taking on the tone she had once used for academic lectures. You called it because you're afraid. Humans do not frighten the Zephyrian Empire. No, Sarah agreed. We terrify you, because we've revealed the fundamental weakness of your entire civilization. Every major species in this chamber built their power on the assumption that technological superiority was permanent. You developed advanced weapons, sophisticated defenses, and complex infrastructure, then used those advantages to dominate smaller civilizations. The display shifted again, showing detailed analyses of each Council species' military and industrial capabilities. But humans come from a world where technological advantage was always temporary. Our entire history is the story of innovative underdogs finding ways to defeat superior forces. We've defeated cavalry with pikes, knights with crossbows, battleships with submarines, empires with guerrilla warfare, and industrial powers with information networks. We've learned that every technological advantage creates new vulnerabilities. And now, she continued, we've taught that lesson to every minor species in the galaxy. Ambassador Kellen spoke again, his voice carrying new authority. The Valian Republics formally request that Dr. Sarah Chen be recognized as humanity's official representative to this assembly. The request was seconded by representatives from a dozen other species, all civilizations that had recently freed themselves from Council domination with human assistance. Council Prime Zeltar's form flared with desperate colors. Dr. Sabo. Chen, surely we can reach some form of accommodation. The Council recognizes that previous policies may have been inadequate. We are prepared to discuss reforms to ensure better representation for all species. Sarah studied the Taluri leader for a long moment, seeing in his alien features the same desperation she had felt 6 months earlier when pleading for justice for her murdered colleagues. Council Prime, she said softly. When I first came before this body, I asked for a simple investigation into the murder of 17 human scientists. I presented irrefutable evidence of Zephyrian crimes. I'd begged for justice. She paused, letting the memory settle in the chamber. And you told me that human voices didn't carry weight in these halls. Dr. Chen, Council Prime Zeltar began, but she continued speaking. You were right, Doctor. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist and peace advocate, had no voice here. Her pleas for justice went unheard. Her evidence was dismissed. Her colleagues' deaths were covered up. But then something interesting happened. Dr. Sarah Chen died in this chamber, killed by your indifference and contempt. And from her death, something new was born. She activated a final display showing the strategic network that now connected liberated civilizations across the galaxy. Sarah Chen, strategic architect of galactic resistance. Sarah Chen, teacher of vulnerable species. Sarah Chen, the ghost in your machines, the weakness in your armor, the voice that speaks for every civilization you've silenced. The chamber was utterly silent as the implications of her words settled. The Council hadn't just dismissed a scientist, they had created their own nemesis. You see, Sarah continued, humans have a tradition. When our peaceful voices go unheard, we don't simply disappear. We evolve. We adapt. We become something far more dangerous than what we were before. She looked directly at Commander Vexkai. You wanted to silence Dr. Nautro? Sarah Chen, the peace-loving xenobiologist. Congratulations. You succeeded. Then her gaze swept across the entire Council assembly, but in doing so, you created Sarah Chen the architect of your downfall. And her fighting name will echo through the galaxy long after your empires have crumbled. Ambassador Kellan stood again, followed by representatives from 18 other newly liberated civilizations. The Free Species Alliance formally recognizes Dr. Sarah Chen as the voice of galactic liberation. As Sarah watched the Council representatives process this development, she felt a profound sense of completion. The transformation that had begun with 17 murdered scientists was now complete. The naive idealist who had believed in peaceful coexistence was gone, replaced by someone who understood that peace could only exist when oppression became impossible. The Council session is concluded, Council Prime Zeltar announced, his form dim with defeat. As the alien representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them stealing worried glances at the small human woman who had just announced the end of their civilization's dominance, Sarah remained at the central podium. Commander Vexai approached her as the chamber emptied, his predatory grace replaced by something that might have been respect. Dr. Chen, he said quietly, you have won this conflict. But do you truly believe this galaxy will be better without the Council's guidance? Commander, Your people killed 17 innocent scientists because they were inconvenient to your expansion plans. You've murdered thousands of civilians from dozens of species. You've destroyed entire biospheres for short-term economic gain. She met his alien gaze directly. Yes, I believe the galaxy will be better without your guidance, because the alternative is a universe where voices like mine go unheard until they become voices like this. As Vekshai walked away, Sarah stood alone in the vast chamber where her transformation had begun. The last time she had been here, she was a dismissed scientist begging for justice. Now she was the acknowledged leader of a galactic revolution. But most importantly, she was no longer silent. Her voice had been heard, her message understood, and her fighting name established among the stars. The galaxy had learned, perhaps too late, why it was dangerous to ignore a human who spoke for justice. Because when peaceful voices went unheard, they had a tendency to become something far more dangerous. Voices that spoke for war, liberation, and the fundamental right of every species to defend itself against tyranny. And Sarah Chan's voice would continue speaking until every civilization in the galaxy was free to determine its own destiny, or until the stars themselves went dark. The council had silenced Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist, but they had awakened Sarah Chen, liberator of worlds, and her fighting name would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. Her voice went unheard until her fighting name came forward. Best HFY Stories.